Welcome back to TVB News. A woman died and her husband was injured in a family tragedy in Xinhuan today. Police say the 52-year-old woman died after falling from a building in Shek Wai Kok Estate. Officers believe her husband, who is about 80 years old, was the victim of a knife attack. He was sent to Yanchai Hospital for treatment. Sources at the scene said the couple had argued before tragedy struck. The chairman of the Equal Opportunities Commission says one of the biggest obstacles to having an anti-sexual discrimination law is opposition from religious and family groups. But Alfred Chan believes a consensus can be reached if marriage is not part of the deal. Winnie Wong has more.
One of the most controversial topics that the Equal Opportunities Commission faces right now is legislation for anti-sexual orientation discrimination. Speaking to TVB News, EOC Chairman Alfred Chan admitted he was having trouble tackling the subject.
Well, that's a diabolical subject at the moment. Obviously, I think, for those sexual minorities, lesbian, gays, bisexuals and transgender people, obviously they are very keen to see government legislate to protect their rights. But on the other hand, I think, represented by mostly religious groups as well as those family groups who would hold tight to so-called traditional family values, they are deadly opposing any legislation at all.
Asked how he thinks all sides can come to a consensus, the chairman made an interesting revelation.
I still see a common area that they could make conciliation of, i.e., being protecting the minority, having their own rights, to their own lives, as long as we don't touch marriages. Seems to be, both sides are okay.
Marriage, though, I think a lot of LGBT couples, they are aiming for that, though.
Having said that, to my surprise, in fact, many individuals told me, in fact, they are pretty happy to stay as partners. They understand what Asian culture is. They understand it would be very, very difficult. But they do wish to have their own choices of life. To be with somebody in the same sex, and living as partners. And that's, as much as they ask for. And I think this modest wish should be granted.
Chan says the EOC is currently pushing the government to take immediate action on sexual orientation legislation. However, he says with the upcoming Legislative Council and Chief Executive elections, it perhaps won't be until later next year when the topic gets picked up again. Winnie Wong, TVB News.
Secretary for Development Paul Chan stressed today the government would continue to boost housing supply. He says many people are still being priced out of the private market. Adam Shi reports.
In its latest estimate, the government says some 93,000 new flats could be available in the private market over the next 3 to 4 years. That's the highest number since 2004. The development chief said in the first half of this year, 10,600 private homes were added to the market, which was higher than the government target of 9,000. Even so, Chan said there was no reason to ease efforts to boost supply. He stressed the government would push ahead with its land sale program. Chan said even if home prices are to head south, it's still difficult for an average person to own a home. He also said the government plans to seek the public's advice in the fourth quarter of this year on where to look for land to build homes after 2030. And the government is considering tougher measures in the fight against subdivided flats.
Making the directors of those companies operating subdivided flats to be responsible for those inappropriate or illegal actions. Because under the current legislation, the offender is liable to a fine of maximum $200,000 and imprisonment of up to a year plus a daily fine. But for those who hide behind a corporate vehicle, they may be able to get away from such criminal sanctions. So what we are looking at is how to make these people personally liable for such actions.
Chen also said the government is considering authorizing some buildings department inspectors to enter suspicious units if owners or tenants refuse to cooperate. Adam Xu, TVB News.
Turning overseas again, former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva will stand trial for alleged obstruction of justice. A court will hear charges that he obstructed a corruption investigation involving state-run oil giant Petrobras. Lula and 5 others are accused of trying to buy the silence of a former Petrobras director implicated in the scandal. A trial date has not yet been set. The former leader denies any wrongdoing. Brazil's largest engineering companies are accused of overcharging Petrobras for work and passing on kickbacks to executives and politicians. Lula is also accused by Sao Paulo state prosecutors of money laundering and criminal misrepresentation in connection with an alleged real estate scheme that benefited him and his family.
Hillary Clinton's team says the computer network used by the campaign of the U.S. Democratic presidential nominee was hacked as part of a broader breach of the Democratic National Committee. Russia has denied involvement in the case. And now that both the Republican and Democratic National Conventions have ended, a war of words is heating up on the campaign trail. Yesterday, Clinton talked about the U.S. economy, while her rival Donald Trump focused on the email scandal while she served as Secretary of State.
How do you lie to the FBI and now you're running for president? How does that happen? Right? You know, it's interesting. Every time I mention her, everyone screams, lock her up, lock her up, lock her up. They keep screaming. I don't have to be so nice anymore. I'm taking the gloves off.
When he talks about make America great again, but he doesn't make a single thing in America. And I also have to say, I feel like I have a very good idea about how a president can help create jobs, because over the 8 years my husband was president, we created 23 million new jobs.
Scottish police have charged 77 people and found more than 30 million pictures of young people being abused during a 6-week operation against online child abuse. Police say 122 youngsters have been referred to Child Protection Services, and more than 500 children between the ages of 3 and 18 have been identified as potential victims. The suspects face more than 390 charges, including rape, grooming, sexual extortion, and indecent communication. Detectives found more than 100,000 online chat logs focusing on sites and social media platforms used by young people. So, Tony, what's happening in sports?
Okay, well, we've got the last major of the year to talk about, but first we'll talk about football. Italian giants Juventus defeated South China 2-1 in the International Challenge Cup at Hong Kong Stadium. South China's Chan Suu-ki opened the scoring in the 21st minute. However, the Serie A champs equalised 5 minutes later, and Lorenzo Rossetti scored the game winner 7 minutes from time.